scramble for Africa at the end of the 19th century. How else to root out the inhuman interior trade which had been oppressing men and women across the continent since before the first caravel rounded Cape Bojador in 1434?
If every time you refer to a history, you're told that you or the history is racist, I mean, that's an incredibly monochromatic, sort of narrowing down way to look at things. And that's literally what's happening now, especially in America. So the history is being winnowed down to one lens. I'm not saying that slavery is a small thing or even that it shouldn't be a heuristic, but to have everything reduced to the question of racism or not racist, imposing contemporary morality on the past is such a shame of such a mockery really of what of the attitude we should have when we look with curiosity at the past.
I think we have to challenge the arguments that are made increasingly which attempt to portray the freest and most prosperous societies in the world as hellholes of oppression and poverty. These are absurd, and we ought to have we not only have a kind of moral obligation, but we ought to feel a natural indignation when these libels are against us, of course, but they're also against our parents and grandparents. They're saying that the woke people are in a sense arguing that the people who lived in these islands for the last, particularly in the modern era, have been monsters who preyed on the world. That is an utter absurdity.
The West's imperial history deserves better than the self-serving or self-lacerating versions we had told ourselves. Both are too simple. But in recent years, one myth above all others has distorted the debate and obscured the West's greatest discovery of all. What is that myth? Well, it's the belief that its empires made the West rich.
The claim is often made that that the West is rich because of its exploitation of resources and people elsewhere in the world. Let's just stick to the case of slavery. That claim was made famously by the Trinidadian academic Eric Williams in 1940 in his book Capitalism and Slavery. The claim that Britain's industrial wealth was derived from the backs of African slaves in the West Indies. The consensus among economic historians of British colonialism and among historians of slavery is that this thesis has been widely discredited. And I'm there quoting David Bryan Davis, the doyen of American historians of abolition and slavery. He said that in 2010. Yes, it is true that slavery and the slave trade made a contribution to the British economy, but the contribution it made was never a driving force behind industrialization. There are a number of other important factors. So made a contribution, but to say that the wealth and prosperity of industrial and post-industrial Britain was built on slavery is false.
Britain has lost its colonies. America hasn't got any colonies to speak of, and they both become richer and richer and richer. So I don't see how on earth you can claim it's through exploitation of certainly not of third world countries.
Plunder and slavery were not what generated the West's wealth. The reality is very different. The West grew astonishingly rich thanks to economic growth, a discovery that took the form of one of the most shattering and liberating transitions in human history, the Industrial Revolution.
The transformation of wealth that took place in the 19th century was incredible and far better off. I mean, people were in rags. They literally had famines. If you go back far enough, you have people eating bark in London to try and survive and dying of starvation. This is not some country idyllic paradise that we're comparing with. We're comparing with people working every day, long hours, winter and summer, with one set of clothes, and just horrible lives. So I think it's incontestable to anybody who seriously looks at the figures that life was far better by the end of the 19th century, and industrialization and agricultural revolution transformed for the better the lives of millions of people.